name is Kimberly Main. I'm a registered yoga teacher specializing in physical and mental health injuries. In today's workshop, you'll learn about Yin Yoga, the benefits, and how to create your own home practice. So Yin Yoga is a hatha style of yoga that is focused on long passive holds that are seated and reclined in nature. Yin Yoga helps us to build flexibility and also helps to improve the energetic systems of the body, also known as the meridians, and the chi, or the energy that flows through our bodies. So to safely and effectively practice Yin Yoga, we need two characteristics to be present. The first is to make sure that the muscles are fully relaxing, so we can really get into those connective tissues, the ligaments and tendons, fascia in the body. And the second is that we're holding the postures for at least 3 to 10 minutes, or even sometimes longer, as we practice and become more advanced practitioners. So both yin and yang energies you've probably heard of. Not sure if you know, but they both need to be present within our bodies and within our lives. So what I mean by that is we need both yin types of yoga practice and yang type of yoga practice, and yin and yang types of activities or objects or things in our lives that can help to create that balance of yin and yang energy within our physical and emotional and spiritual bodies to make us feel more healthy and a greater sense of well-being. So anything that is yin, or a type of object or thing in life, is generally something that is feminine in nature. It is often dark or cool or hidden and unmoving. And anything that is yang in nature is generally masculine, and generally it's fast moving, fluid, warm, fiery. So like we already talked about, a yin practice has postures that are longer holds, not moving a lot, tend to focus on the cooler aspects of the body, while the yang practice focuses more on shorter holds of postures, anywhere between 30 seconds to a minute, fast moving, creating a lot of warmth and fiery energy in the body. So when we come to a yoga practice or practicing in a way that is accompanying both these energies, we can still do that within a yin type of practice. It just depends on what postures we are choosing. They can tend to be a little bit more energetic in nature, more masculine. Moving on to the benefits of Yin Yoga and exercising the joints and connective tissues. So the connective tissues we've already discussed that are trained in Yin Yoga are ligaments, tendons, and fascia. Bone isn't necessarily included, but it is stressed as part of that practice as well. So each connective tissue has a different level of plasticity or elasticity. So plasticity is the ability of a tissue to be stretched and then stay in that stretched position. And elasticity is the ability of connective tissue to be stretched and then come back to its original state. So ligaments have a strong level of plasticity, while tendons are more of an elastic connective tissue, and fascia as well has sort of a balance of elasticity and plasticity, whereas bone is plastic. Next, we're going to take a deeper look at the connective tissue's purposes in the body and why we want to keep them healthy and strong. So tendons, as many of you may know, or where a muscle attaches to a bone, and ligaments are where a bone attaches to another bone, creating that security in a joint. Fascia is a three-dimensional connective tissue that runs from head to toe without interruption. And it generally separates all the different cavities and systems of the body. It's like an interweaving web throughout your full body, holding everything together and keeping it nice and stable. All connective tissues have a basic foundation and structure and are composed of an elastocollagen matrix that is embedded in a fluid ground substance. The substance varies in some different tissues and joints. The needs are different. So some joints need to be more flexible, some need to be very, very strong. So in the joints that need to be having more strength and stability, the collagen fibers are laid down, not parallel, but in misalignment. And collagen fibers are laid down more parallel in joints that need more flexibility. To retain the range of motion of our joints and repair our joints, it's important for us to stimulate the fibroblasts, which are stimulated through exercise. Fibroblasts then create the production of collagen fibers, which are an important part of connective tissue, and it helps to lay down these fibers in an appropriate aligned way. The fibroblasts also produce and stimulate hyaluronic acid, which is an important part of connective tissue as well, but also stimulates the chi in the body, which is the energetic systems of the body, or the meridians. And this is an important part of Yin Yoga, where we do postures associated with stimulating the different meridians of the body, which we will touch on next. Let's move on to discussing the meridians further and how Yin Yoga can benefit the energetic system or meridian systems of the body. So many of you heard of the modern meridian theory, which states that all connective tissue, once stressed, creates what's called fibroblasts. And fibroblasts create what's called or stimulate hyaluronic acid. So this hyaluronic acid has the ability to fix and polarize water. So when we fix or polarize water, we create what's called electrical impulse or an information highway, which is great for the meridian systems because it allows the chi, or the energetic flow, to move through the body freely. So if we do have any blockages, fixations in the tissues of the body, or scar tissue, this makes it so that chi cannot pass freely, it becomes stagnant, and our energy shifts and changes and may develop disease or illness. So that's where the yin postures come in that help to stimulate the different meridians or main meridians of the body. And this helps to stress and stretch the joints and tissues so that we can get rid of any of these fixations or blockages in the body. Next, we're going to review some of the major and main meridians and how to stimulate them with specific yoga postures. Next, we're going to move on to talking about each of the major meridians, what they're responsible for maintaining and balancing in the body, and also the postures that can help balance meridians and also clear any stagnancy that exists. So the first meridian we're going to talk about is the stomach meridian. And the stomach meridian is responsible for improving compassion and sympathy, for preventing moodiness, for preventing excessive nervousness or explosive behavior, and also as a reservoir for food and water. So postures that can help keep this meridian healthy, strong, and balanced are 4 different ones that I'm going to share with you today. So the first is 2 different back bends, and actually many back bends can be helpful for the stomach meridian. The first is called Sphinx pose. So for that one, you're going to come onto your belly, bring your elbows underneath your shoulders, and just, you don't want to release your head all the way down, but you can look slightly down and forward. And letting all of the weight relax into your pelvis and legs, kind of like it was your tail resting on the ground, fully rooted. Coming into your breath. No need to fix or change the breath, just simply notice. I'm not going to hold these for the 3 to 10 minutes that you could do, but I just want to give you the demonstrations. So this one is called Sphinx. The next one is called Seal, where you walk your hands more forward, and like little seal flippers, you slowly turn out your hands. And you can come up as high as is comfortable, pelvis still resting on the ground. You want to make sure that your shoulders aren't hunching up by the ears, so shoulders tuck onto the back, so you're nice and stable there. And same thing, just connecting back to your breath. Your pelvis is really heavy, your legs are relaxed. And again, you could hold that for 3 to 10 minutes. The next one is called a dragon lunge. And for this, I've got some props here, so you can use different props throughout your different postures that require them. So for an option here, you can use a yoga block. Step your left foot forward, so your left knee is over the ankle, and your back knee is underneath your hip to start. Then you're just going to shift forward. You can place that block down, so you're resting your hand on the block, your other elbow onto your knee. And you would pause here. Again, relaxing the muscles the best that you can. And that helps. What helps to do that is with your breathing. So really focusing on a full exhale. It really helps to relax the body and also allows you to have a full inhale. So that's our dragon lunge, and of course you would do the other side as well. The last one is called, it's also a back bend, but it's a supportive back one. It's called saddle. So for this one, you're going to need 2 bolsters or 2 pillows if you have them at home that are fairly dense. And I'm just going to stack them both up here to start. You might not need 2 like me, but if you have tight quads and front hip flexors and front body, you may need that. And you can also sit onto a block here too, if you don't come right to the ground. And then what you're going to do is just lay back onto the bolsters, and you can also take a pillow or a blanket and place it underneath your head here, so you're fully supported. Relax your elbows down. If you don't want to come out of it like that, but if your knees are lifting off, that's not good. You want to give some more support to your hips underneath. Okay, so again, we would be here for about 3 to 10 minutes. To come out, you want to try to roll slightly off to the side. Bring one knee out and then the other, and then you can kind of roll over to your side and press yourself up. So that is our stomach meridian. And next we're going to move on to the liver meridian. The liver meridian helps to prevent anger and promotes kindness, stores blood, helps to govern healthy chi flow, and controls tendons. The postures that are helpful for balancing liver meridian are 5 different ones I'm going to show you next. So the first is called half butterfly. And for this, you can use a blanket or a bolster for a prop. I'm going to use a block to demonstrate. So you're going to come onto your bum. Make sure that you're not curling your pelvis under. If so, when you come into your position here, you can place a blanket underneath your bum. You're going to place your left foot to your inner thigh. If your knee is quite lifted, you can place a blanket or a block underneath that knee. And then from here, you're going to lengthen up nice and tall. You're going to start to fold forward here. And your straight leg is about 45, it's just under 45 degrees out to the side. do both sides here. Full butterfly is bringing your soles of your feet together, lengthen up nice and tall, and then coming forward. We don't want to curl and round too much here. You can round slightly. And if your knees are quite high like mine, you can place a block under each knee or thigh. Sometimes feels better. And then coming forward from there. And again, really coming back into your breath. Noticing the full exhales, full inhales. From here, we're going to move on to dragonfly, which is kind of similar, but you're just going to bring both legs out to the side. You can bring your hands behind you, make sure you're sitting up nice and tall to help to get that slight tilt of the pelvis rolling forward. If it is tucking under, you feel quite tight in the hip crease, you can sit up onto a blanket or a block as well. I like to just put my hands behind me here and gazing forward. Moving on to our last pose here, which is called frog. And for this one, I like to have a blanket to the inside of my knees. It does become quite tender on your knees if you don't have them. So from here, you're going to bring both your knees nice and wide. Tilt your toes out so your ankle is underneath your knee in line. And then keeping your hip in line over the knee, so you don't want to bring it too far forward. You're going to come down onto your elbows here. Again, coming back into your breath. Maybe inviting the breath here into the belly. And then to come out, just going to gently walk the knees back together and coming back to seated. And next we're going to move on to the Spleen Meridian. So the Spleen Meridian promotes faithfulness, helps to prevent worry, helps motivation and creativity, helps with the distribution of food, and also nourishes the limbs and skeletal muscles. So we'll move on to some postures that help to keep this meridian balanced and healthy. So the first one is one you've already done, but just as a review, it's called seal. So you can go onto your belly, bring your hands underneath your shoulders, then bring your elbows underneath your shoulders, and then walk your hands forward, straightening your arms so you turn the fingertips out. And you can lift up as high as is comfortable, relaxing the shoulders in the shoulder socket, relaxing your legs and your pelvis, and tuning into your breath. Again, holding for longer than I'm going for. The next one you can move on to is saddle, which we've already done as well. But another quick review how to get in. You need 2 bolsters. You need a blanket or a towel for a pillow, and possibly a block underneath you. You're gonna come onto your knees, bring the block underneath your hips. You're gonna bring the bolsters right up to your hips and low back. Relaxing back and bringing the blanket underneath your head, relaxing your arms down. And again, tuning into your breathing. If there is a lot of pressure in your low back, you can try to slightly tuck your tail to lengthen out that low back a little. And again, to get out, you're just going to slightly roll to one side, one foot out and then the other. You can roll to the side, press yourself up. All right, and the last 2 postures are swan and dragonfly. So dragonfly you've also done previously, but another quick review. You can sit up onto a blanket as well here. Remember, if the pelvis is rolling under, place your hands behind you, sit up nice and tall. Try to lean forward from the pelvis, not the low back. And breathing here. And the last one is called swan, or some of you may have known as pigeon pose. A couple options for support here. You can use a bolster or a block. So to get into this one, you're going to come into tabletop or plank. Bring your left knee to your left wrist, walk your lower leg forward and rock your right leg back. So in this version, you can place a bolster under your hip if it's lifted, or block, sorry. And you can also place a bolster right through, so you're nice and supported underneath that back thigh and left hip. And then you can come down to your elbows. You can also use a block underneath your forehead. So really nice way to settle in for a long hold. Releasing your full weight down there. All right. Well, moving on to our next meridian, which is the urinary tract, or urinary meridian. The urinary bladder meridian helps to prevent physical manifestations of disorders. It also influences the liver meridian and facilitates storing and discharging of the body. So there's different themes here for postures that help to balance this meridian. So the first is any forward folds. So forward folds that are seated or standing. So I'm going to demo one seated and one standing forward fold. So the first is bringing your legs out in front. Again, if your pelvis is rolled under, you can sit up onto a blanket or a bolster. You're going to reach your arms up and lengthen forward. If you'd like some support here, you can take your bolster and place it under your thighs. Just kind of relax down. Maybe even you want 2 bolsters. Relax down so you're supported here. And if you don't want any bolsters, that's okay too. And forward, just make sure you're not curling your pelvis under. And again, holding for longer than I am here. A standing pose. You can take a block, bring your feet hip distance apart, flexing forward and placing your hands onto the block and releasing your head down. Relaxing your full upper body. Keeping rooted in your feet. And connecting to your breath. And slowly rolling yourself back up once that's complete. The next is any external rotation of your thigh bone or femur bone here. So that means moving your leg externally. So the first one is swan pose. You've already done this a few times. I'm gonna show you one more time how to get into it. And the second one is called box. So to get into swan, you can start in tabletop or plank. Bring your left knee to your left elbow, bring the lower leg forward. Walk your right toes back. And again, you can place the bolster through underneath your hips, or a block underneath your left hip. And then coming forward. The second one is called box posture. Sometimes you might want a little bit of height underneath your hip. I know I do. And this one you come forward into tabletop, and then bring your right knee and leg around the left, and try and bring your feet equally on both sides of your hips before you sit back down onto your support. So So the goal is to keep the knees tracking over one another and the legs equal on both sides. Of course, mine aren't. I'm quite tight in this hip area. You can give yourself more height if you like, or even something even between the knees if that helps you. You're just going to sit up nice and tall. If you'd like, you can start to lean slightly forward and breathe in there. And the hips are the juicy postures, tend to be where we hold most of our emotions and anything we don't want to deal with. So it takes a little longer to open those areas up. So be patient. The last is any lying twists or seated twists. I'm going to show you a lying twist. And this one, you can have some support as well if your knee doesn't go quite to the ground. So I'm going to use a bolster here. Come onto your back. You're going to cross your left knee over your right. Lift your hips up and over to the left and drop your legs over to the right. And you're going to take your left arm and extend it out. So since my knee doesn't go right down to the ground, I'm going to take the bolster and place my knee onto the bolster. And then extending the left arm nice and long. Maybe closing the eyes. Gently holding on to that knee. And of course, slowly coming back to center, doing both sides. Pressing yourself up to seated. And our next meridian is the Gallbladder Meridian. The Gallbladder Meridian prevents fear, promotes courage, is a reservoir for bile, and promotes equilibrium. The main postures that help this meridian stay balanced are external rotation of the thigh or femur bone that we've already talked about. So we'll review a few of those external rotation style of postures and a few new ones. So the first one to review is swan posture, which we've already done. Again, coming to tabletop, bringing the left knee to the left wrist, lower leg forward, walking your right leg back. Support underneath the thigh and hip with a bolster or block underneath the left hip. You can come down to your elbows. The next one we've done is shoelace pose, or also called box, interchangeable names there. So you can sit up onto a block. You're gonna come forward and cross your right leg and knee over the left and sit yourself back onto the block and make sure that both your hip bones remain balanced. So you're not rolling off to one side or the other, and sitting up nice and tall. Okay, and the last one is called figure four. So if those two postures are a little bit too strenuous or challenging for you this time, you can come onto your back and take recline figure four. So cross your left ankle over your right knee. Gently press that knee away from you. You can stay here, or you can lift your foot up onto a block to give a little bit more of a stretch, or you can reach through and grab onto your thigh here. Encouraging your sacrum and your tailbone to eventually return down to the earth, relaxing the shoulders, and connecting back to your breath here. And then slowly putting the foot down, uncrossing, and of course you do the other side. The last meridian we're going to move on to today is the heart meridian, probably the most important of all. The heart meridian helps to promote receptivity, prevents sadness and depression, and regulates blood. The postures that help to balance this meridian are forward folds, so seated or standing, back bends, which we've described a few already, which I will review. And then opening up the shoulders, which will be a couple new postures. So again, to review, forward folds can be seated or standing. The ones that we demoed already were seated with the legs together, or you can bring them apart, hands behind you if needed to keep that pelvis from tucking under. Or you can also give height underneath your pelvis with a block or a blanket. With the feet together, same thing. You're gonna lengthen up nice and tall, folding forward. Again, you could place a bolster or blanket on top of the knees. Back bends, we've already described those a few times. So the first one we started with was Sphinx. So coming onto your belly, elbows underneath your shoulders, pretending your tail, legs here nice and relaxed, and your hips. You can gaze slightly down and forward. Seal was another option. Arms are nice and long, turning the palms slightly out. You can lift yourself a little higher than I am, whatever feels most comfortable. Really relaxing to the pelvis and the legs there. The other back bend that was supported we did was saddle. So we've demoed that a few times. I'm not going to review that. Where you stack your bolsters. Actually, the one thing I do want to review is how we stack the bolsters. So you stack one so that it's right up against your pelvis. And the second one is more stacked into your middle back so that you can best support your natural curves in your spine. So it's going to be a little different placement, of course, for everyone. But as you come back, you want to kind of place that second bolster into where your low back is. And that'll just give you a little bit more support there. So I half demoed, I said I wasn't going to demo. And the last ones here are a couple shoulder postures. So the first is called Thread the Needle. So what you're going to do for that one is come into tabletop. You're going to take your left arm, you're going to reach it up, and then you're going to twist and drop that left shoulder down, bringing the head down, and walking your hand forward here. You don't want a lot of weight on your head and neck, and hips should stay over top of the knees. And again, you're just really trying to relax here into support of the earth beneath you. And of course, we would do both sides here. The second shoulder opener you can try is called Eagle Arms. So you bring both arms up, drop your right arm underneath the left, and you might do that a few times just to get a bit of an opening there in the shoulders. Right under, and you can press the backs of your hands together. You can interlace all your fingers. If none of those are working, you can give yourself a big hug, and the idea here is to help pretend that you're separating your shoulder blades apart from one another. So squeezing everything to the center line. Elbows in line with the shoulders or slightly above. And breathing. And of course, you could do the other side, bringing the left arm now underneath the right. So a few times going through on that side and then finding the sweet spot here. And back into the breath. And for these shoulder postures, you want to hold them for generally it's a shorter amount of time just because the positioning isn't as supported. So around 2 to 3 minutes is good for those. Moving on to how to create your own home yin practice. Which hopefully many of you are excited to do that, practice at home and to create your own home practice. But you might be wondering, how do I do that? How do I sequence the postures? Which postures do I use? And what props do I use? So we'll talk about that next. So what you can start with when building your class is maybe picking a certain theme or meridian or area of the body that you would like to target or focus on. And once you've got that, you can move on to how you want to flow your class. So you might have a different energetic flow each class. So you might start with a lower energy postures and then move up to an energetic arc, which is a higher energy posture, and then moving down to that more of our relaxation Shavasana pose at the end. You might reverse that order and start with the higher energy postures and then gradually decline the energy to relaxation towards the end. Other ways of sequencing might be doing an area of the body and then moving through different areas of the body that you're targeting. So maybe choosing the hips and then moving on to doing postures that open the front line of the body, or postures that open the whole back line of the body. Lots of options there. So once you figure out how you're going to sequence your postures, you might be thinking about how long should I do the holds and what should I do in those holds if they're a little bit longer. So when you're first starting in practice, you might want to start with even like 2.5 to 3 minutes and then build up from there, because it can be a long time if you're used to doing shorter held postures for 30 seconds to a minute or so. So start with that. And then for music, you want to pick something that isn't too distracting. So something that doesn't have a lot of lyrics is really helpful. And you might even choose to read a short poem or yogic text or reading during your practice as well. And generally starting out, you might start with just a 30-minute practice. Maybe pick 3 or 4 postures that you can do and practice on your own. And then once you get comfortable with that, you can build up from there. If you do notice in the postures that you're feeling slight pain or a strong tension, that's okay. I encourage you to stay in that, and this will help to build concentration and discipline. If it's shooting pain or you do have an injury and you're feeling a lot of pain, I encourage you to use a prop. So what we discussed previously, a bolster or a block or a blanket. And that's all for our Yin Yoga workshop. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you next time.